Welcome to the deep dive. We take complex information, distill it down, and give you, well, a shortcut to being truly well informed. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration. It's about a concept foundational to Islam, Muslim unity. Our sources for this deep dive, they're powerful texts. We've got excerpts from Muslim unity, Quranic guidance, and prophetic wisdom, drawing right from the Holy Quran, the Sunnah, that's the Prophet Muhammad's practice, and insights from Islamic scholars, both classical and contemporary. Our mission really is to unpack this divine mandate for unity. We want to understand its roots, explore the pretty serious consequences of disunity, and also discover practical steps for fostering cohesion. Prepare for some insightful moments as we dive deep into this rich material. So let's dive right in. This whole idea of Muslim unity, al-Ummah, al-Wahida, the one community, it's not just about, culture or nationality. Our sources describe it as something fundamental, deeply rooted in faith. The concept of ukhuwah, brotherhood, it's meant to foster this deep sense of family among believers worldwide.
Yeah, and what's really crucial to grasp here is that Islam, as presented in these texts, is seen as a singular, unified religion, inherently free from sects. The core belief in one God, Tawhid, and Muhammad's prophethood, peace be upon him, well, that suggests unity isn't just a nice social outcome or some strategic benefit. It's presented as an inherent theological principle. So any form of disunity, that's actually seen as diverging from God's design. Real, lasting unity, the sources say, comes from that shared spiritual foundation, devotion to Allah, not really from external things like where you're from or what language you speak.
That's such a powerful framing. Unity is theological, not just social. And the sources really hammer this home, don't they? That the Quran and Sunnah consistently point to unity as the cornerstone for a community to be resilient, prosperous, spiritually alive. And conversely, disunity is painted as this perilous path, leading to collective failure, even losing divine support. It sounds like a serious warning.
It absolutely is. The texts are very clear. Unity isn't just optional. It's essential for the community's health and, well, in every way.
Okay, so if unity is that central, how does the Quran then spell out this divine command? Let's maybe look at some specific verses. We could start with Surah Al-Hujurat. Verse 10, it's known as the verse of brotherhood, Yat al-Ukhwa. It says, "The believers are nothing else than brothers. Therefore, make peace between your brethren and observe your duty to Allah that haply ye may obtain mercy."
Effectively.
So it establishes this intrinsic brotherhood, right? Transcending ethnicity, tribe, race, like different parts of one body working together.
Right. And what's really striking there is the focus on reconciliation. The Arabic word aslihu, make reconciliation, it's actually repeated 3 times around that verse. That really underscores Islam's commitment to resolving disputes. And the historical context, came about after actual clashes between early Muslims. So it's very practical. Reconciliation here isn't just smoothing things over. It means getting to the root causes of the conflict and dealing with them. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, reconciliation is directly linked to Taqwa, God consciousness, and divine mercy. So it's not just a social duty, it's a deeply spiritual act, and one that needs impartiality.
Wow. So reconciliation isn't just fixing a fight. It's actually a spiritual practice tied to your awareness of God and hoping for his mercy. That elevates it significantly.
Absolutely. And scholars, they discuss how this applies even in governance, referencing historical disputes, even among the prophet's companions. It shows unity isn't some static thing you achieve once. It's a continuous struggle, both spiritual and practical, always needing effort because, well, we're human.
Okay, another key verse. This one's from Surah Al-Imran, verse 103. "And hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided. And remember the favor of Allah upon you when you were enemies, and he brought your hearts together and you became by his favor brothers." Yeah, that's that. That rope of Allah scholars pretty consistently say that means the Quran and Sunnah, right?
Yes, the foundational text. And this verse is powerful because it reminds believers how Allah changed them from enemies into brothers. It specifically references the Aus and Khazraj tribes in Medina. They had this long, bitter history, and Islam brought them together. So it highlights that real unity, especially overcoming deep historical divides, often needs divine help, divine grace. It sort of implies unity is a blessing, something Allah actively gives and helps maintain, which, raises a question. Without that inner piety, that personal responsibility, can any external attempts at unity really last? Or are they just superficial?
That's a really important question. If unity is a blessing, it implies we have a part to play in being worthy of it, maintaining it, both inwardly and outwardly. Connects it right back to personal accountability. Then there's Surah Al-Anfal, verse 46. In the context of collective effort, it gives a pretty stern warning, and obey Allah and his messenger, and do not dispute, and thus lose courage, and then your strength would depart, and be patient. Indeed, Allah is with the patient. Ayo. So, disputing, Tanazu, it directly leads to faltering, losing courage, and losing collective strength. That sounds like a heavy consequence.
It is, definitely. And classical commentaries like Tafsir Quran explain there are sort of two big results from dissension. One, individuals become weak, lose heart. And two, the community itself loses its standing, its influence. And the antidote prescribed, savor patience. But it's more than just waiting. It means resilience, not being rigid about your own opinions, tolerating things that maybe don't suit your personal taste. What's really interesting here is while this verse often comes up regarding conflict or war, the principles are universal. Obey Allah and His Messenger. Don't dispute. Be patient. These apply to any collective effort the community undertakes. Social reform, economic projects, political action, whatever. And the strength mentioned isn't just military. It's moral, social, economic, political. Comprehensive strength.
Right, so the takeaway seems to be, division isn't just messy, it actively weakens the community in every sphere. It's a warning for any group effort. Okay, beyond those core verses, there are others that reinforce this, but maybe also add nuance about diversity. Like Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 92. Indeed, this religion of yours is one religion. Straightforward, emphasizing the oneness of the Ummah, rooted in the oneness of God, Tawhid.
Exactly, and this verse implies that splitting into sects is a serious deviation. Almost like compromising Tawhid, but on a communal level. It's a strong statement about faith being unified.
Then at Tawbah, verse 71. The believers, both men and women, are allies of one another. They enjoin good, forbid evil. So believers are mutual allies, protectors. It sounds very active, reciprocal, upholding the moral order together, not just passively existing side by side.
Precisely. Unity isn't passive. It demands active participation. Maintaining the community's moral health through Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi Anil Munkar, enjoining good and forbidding evil. It's a shared job.
And Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 48, offers a fascinating angle on diversity. Had Allah willed, He could have made you one community, but He intended to test you. So race to all that is good. So it acknowledges God's wisdom in allowing different laws or practices as a test.
Yeah, it suggests that even within the wider Ummah, legitimate differences exist. They're part of the plan. And unity isn't found by forcing everyone into the same mold, but by channeling those diverse energies towards shared good goals. Cooperative action, like a race towards virtue, maybe.
A race towards good, not sameness. I like that. And lastly, that powerful verse from Al-Hujurat, verse 13. O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. So the purpose of diversity nations, tribes, is for mutual acquaintance, understanding, not for pride or division. Real nobility comes from righteousness, Taqwa.
This verse directly hits back against tribalism, racism, nationalism, all of it. It establishes that Islamic unity, Islamic brotherhood, is fundamentally universal, inclusive. Diversity becomes a source of richness, a tool for interaction, not a reason for splitting up. It's a profoundly unifying message, paradoxically, through acknowledging diversity.
Okay, so that lays out the Quranic blueprint. Powerful stuff. But what does it look like on the ground? In daily life? Let's turn to the Prophet Muhammad's guidance, the Sunnah. These are like living interpretations of those principles. One of the most famous illustrations is that hadith, right? The believers in their mutual kindness, compassion, and sympathy are just like one body. Quote, when one of the limbs suffers, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness and fever.
Such a vivid metaphor, really visceral. It implies that if you're indifferent to another Muslim suffering, it's not just a social lapse, it's potentially a sign of weak faith. It creates this strong, moral, and practical push for solidarity. For collective action, yes, but also for genuine empathy, feeling it together. The key insight, maybe, is that real faith shows itself in that tangible connection. Collective well-being becomes a personal concern.
And the Prophet elaborated on what true faith means. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. That sets a very high bar for true and complete faith.
It really does. It makes that principle, loving for others what you love for yourself, absolutely fundamental to deep belief. Selflessness becomes the bedrock of a cohesive community. And some scholars even say the scope extends beyond Muslims to all humanity potentially. So the takeaway is empathy, selflessness, they aren't just nice extras. They actually indicate the strength of your faith.
And to protect that unity, the Prophet specifically warned against certain things. Do not hate one another, and do not be jealous of one another, and do not desert each other. And oh, Allah's worshippers, be brothers. These are very direct, practical commands against negative feelings and actions.
Yes, and the hadith also specifically says you shouldn't forsake another Muslim for more than 3 days. And crucially, the better person is the one who takes the first step to say salam, the greeting of peace. That really highlights proactive reconciliation, fixing small issues quickly before they fester. The command is, fight those negative feelings, prioritize peace, even make the first move.
Then there are details about mutual support. A Muslim is a brother of another Muslim, so he should neither oppress him nor hand him over to an oppressor. And whoever fulfilled the needs of his brother, Allah will fulfill his needs. And it clarifies that helping an oppressor actually means stopping them from oppressing.
Right, so it sets up this clear, ethical, practical framework. Support each other, yes, but also actively stand against injustice, both helping the victim and restraining the wrongdoer. And the promise of divine reward, Allah fulfilling your needs if you fulfill your brother's, that adds a strong spiritual incentive. The insight here is that brotherhood isn't passive, it's an active duty, demanding you step in against injustice, offer practical help, and Allah rewards that directly. Which leads back to that question, how does this active support system actually build the Ummah's strength and resilience in the real world?
That's a great point. It suggests this solidarity isn't just about individual piety, it's actually strategic for the community's survival and success.
Exactly. It turns individual good deeds into a source of collective power.
And the divine preference for unity is stated so clearly. Allah is pleased for you to do three things: to worship Him and not associate anything with Him, to hold fast to the rope of Allah altogether, and not to become divided.
Placing unity right alongside worshiping Allah alone, Tawhid, that shows its immense importance, doesn't it? It underlines that disunity isn't just a social issue, it's a spiritual offense, something that actually incurs divine displeasure. So the clear message is, working for unity is a direct way to earn Allah's pleasure. It's up there with the most fundamental acts of worship.
We've spent a lot of time on the benefits and the command for unity. But what about the flip side? What happens when it breaks down? The sources are pretty blunt about the warnings, the negative consequences. It's not just a missed opportunity, it's presented as genuinely dangerous.
That's absolutely right. Spiritually, the impact is profound. Disunity fundamentally damages the spiritual core. The Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, warns against splitting into sects and actually equates it to shirk, associating partners with Allah, but in the context of community identity. That's huge. And Surah Al-An'am explicitly says the Prophet is free of responsibility for those who fragment the religion. It leads straight to disobeying Allah, to a deficiency in faith. The consequence is stark. Disunity is a theological problem, like a flaw in belief itself. Socially, well, disunity breeds internal chaos. It breaks down those community bonds. The Prophet warned, this scattering of yours is from Satan. It just sows mistrust, leads to conflict, holds back any kind of progress. And you can look at history. During the Mongol invasions, for example, sources point to internal divisions, lack of solidarity among Muslim groups, leading to betrayal, horrific loss of life, massive destruction. So the social consequence is clear. Disunity eats away at society from the inside, makes it vulnerable. And politically, disunity makes the Ummah weak, open to external exploitation.
Surah Al-Anfal, as we saw, warns that disputes lead to losing courage and strength. History again provides sobering examples. The success of the First Crusade, for instance, wasn't solely Crusader might. They exploited a fractured Islamic world where different rulers were often more focused on their own power struggles than uniting against the external threat. It's fascinating and tragic how history shows disunity isn't just internal squabbles. It can be the cliff edge, leading to major political failure for the collective.
That's a really powerful reminder. These aren't just abstract ideas. They have had massive real-world consequences historically. Okay, so given the severe consequences, the big question is, how do we actually build this unity? How do we sustain it today in our complex world using the guidance from the Quran and Sunnah?
Well, the absolute foundation, stressed over and over in the sources, is holding fast to that rope of Allah, collective adherence to the Quran and Sunnah. That means actively trying to live by their guidance and consciously letting go of old grudges, tribalism, personal agendas that divide people. Second, it's about actively cultivating that principle. Love for your brother what you love for yourself. Really fostering selflessness, sensitivity. Practically, that means fighting hatred, jealousy, abandoning each other. Being proactive about reconciliation, remembering that 3-day limit the Prophet mentioned. Third, promoting mutual support and justice. Actively helping and protecting each other from injustice, both aiding the oppressed and, importantly, restraining the oppressor. And remembering that fulfilling others' needs is linked to divine reward. Fourth, embracing patience, saber, and constructive dialogue. That command to be patient is vital to stop disputes escalating. It means resilience, sure, but also not being rigid, tolerating legitimate differences. That's described almost as a masterstroke for keeping unity. Encouraging dialogue even when you disagree. And finally, The sources definitely highlight the role of scholars, leaders, and community organizations. Scholars and leaders need to guide, advise, warn against splitting hairs, emphasize covering faults, not exposing them. And Muslim organizations can foster unity by creating spaces for dialogue, collaboration, education, working for social justice together. Which maybe brings us back to that earlier point. How can we today try to replicate that amazing spirit of brotherhood the Prophet established in Medina? Between the Muhajirun and Ansar, that profound selflessness the Ansar showed, that kind of spirit feels essential, doesn't it?
What an incredibly rich deep dive, exploring this profound call for Muslim unity and strength. From the Quran saying the believers are but brothers, to the Prophet's metaphor of the Ummah as one body, the divine mandate for coming together seems crystal clear.
Yeah, we've seen unity isn't just presented as a nice idea, it's framed as an inherent theological principle, tied directly to the oneness of God. So disunity becomes a kind of contradiction of divine will. True brotherhood goes beyond surface differences built on that shared faith. And the warnings against disunity are stark. Spiritual decay, social chaos, political weakness.
But conversely, the path to strength lies in that act of solidarity, doesn't it? Mutual support, cultivating patience, selflessness. It's definitely presented as a continuous effort, a struggle, both spiritual and practical. So what does this all mean for you listening? Maybe consider how these deep principles could shape your own interactions, your contributions. How can we all contribute to building a more compassionate world, remembering that unity is a journey, always ongoing, not some fixed endpoint. And perhaps every single individual effort really does count towards building that stronger, more unified whole.